is impacting various industrial sectors, right? And today we are going to be focusing on education and edtech, so the education sector more broadly. And we have very interesting members on the panel, and Jacob has already given you a brief introduction. And as we dive into the panel discussion itself, I will allow the panelists to talk a little bit about what they do, what their companies do. So I will not dive into that right now. So the way I just want to lay out how we plan to do this panel discussion today. We'll do it in 3 segments, if you will, right? So in the first segment, I will discuss with the panelists and try to understand how COVID has impacted their organizations, right? What's happening? How are they dealing with COVID? How are they looking at the post-COVID situation? So we'll spend about 15-20 minutes talking about their organizations and their response. Then we will move on to the next segment where we will talk about broadly the industry itself, right? So how is COVID impacting education and edtech, right? What can we anticipate? And as people who are working in this sector, you know, the panelists would have some interesting insights to share about what it is that they are seeing, what it is that they foresee, and in terms of how this industry is moving forward. And then we will move on to audience Q&A. And our NSRCEL team will help us with that. I think we have about 45 participants. So maybe we will, have you raise your hands when we open up for Q&A, and then we can go in the order. So the NSRCEL team will call out, and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. And please mention whether you're asking the question to a specific panelist or to the panel at large, right? So that's the Q&A, and we'll close subsequently. So without further ado, let me jump into the discussion. So recently, there's a NASSCOM report that talked about how 40% of startups have either temporarily shut down operations or on the verge of shutting down. So when it comes to what COVID has done to startups in general, the picture is pretty gloomy out there, right? And this is not just for education sector, but it's across the board, right? But also for the educational sector, for instance, a number of kindergarten schools have shut down. So there's a lot of impact on brick and mortar traditional educational institutions. On the other hand, edtech startups have sort of held very strong and actually have come out stronger through this crisis. So it's interesting, right? And today amongst our panelists, we have edtech startups. We also have companies that are working more in the traditional sense of education. So it'll be interesting to hear from them. So what we'll do is we will go through a series of questions more like in a rapid fire format. So I'd request the panelists to sort of quickly maybe take a minute or 2 for each question and give their responses, and then we will move on to the next question. So what we will start with is if each of the panelists, and we can go alphabetical here, starting with Aruna of Nambarnagar. Can you please tell us, what your organization does, and then talk about what are the headwinds or tailwinds, or maybe a little bit of both, that you are experiencing because of this pandemic. So over to you, Aruna, and then we can move on to Rajshri, Rucha, and Timothy.
Aruna, apologies, your mic seems to be on mute.
Yeah, now it's on. Hello, Professor and other panelists. Thank you for having me over here for the discussion. I'm sorry if you would kindly repeat the question once again. I was kind of handling the microphone thing.
Yeah, just briefly tell us what you do, what your organization does, and what kind of headwinds or tailwinds that this pandemic has thrown at you.
Sure, ma'am. So Number Nagar is basically an organization which has been into traditional way of education. We've been designing experiential learning centers for children of age between 3 to 14 years. And these experiential learning centers basically cater to teaching concepts in English, reading as well as grammar and mathematics, all the way up to grade 8. And we've also been into setting up these centers across schools in some of the top schools across India. And we've trained the teachers over there. That's what we've been doing for a very long time now. However, as you see, the situation, the pandemic situation is, kind of tossed us over. And we are learning to kind of adopt the new way. We have moved on to, teaching online. We've been sending across all our learning material that we have. It was more so hands-on. So currently what we are doing is we have packaged it in such a way that it can be delivered to children back at their homes, and we teach children online through the sessions, whether it is a Zoom call. All our faculty are doing that currently. So that has been the case. But however, as an organization, for quite some time, we've been building in the tech area also. So now I think, given the situation, we are, speeding up our work in the technology area also. So in due course of time, we will be able to launch our online products too. So that's where we see ourselves at this point of time.
Okay. So what you're saying is you were already on this digital journey, maybe
Yes,
a little slowly.
Yes.
And this sort of nudged you to move faster.
True. Very true. Very true.
Okay.
That has been our case.
Great. So let's move on to our next panelist.
Yeah.
Rajshri, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Srivardhini ma'am, for this wonderful introduction. So yes, all of us have been thinking on pretty much similar lines. So I, as the co-founder of IIMB Theatre, will just give you a brief about what we do and how we do. So like you know, IIMB Theatre is a performing arts company, and we use theatre-based modules to try and build curriculum learning in school children. So I will just elaborate on that a little bit. So theatre inherently brings about a lot of skills by its actual nature. So in terms of understanding of emotions of the self and understanding of others' emotions, like which is empathy, and skills like team building and leadership, or spontaneity and managing the situation, adaptability. These are skills that come inherently in theatre. So what we believe at IIMB Theatre is education primarily is not about teaching, as in lecturing or telling something. We believe that education is about creating a conducive environment for the child where the learning happens organically. So we try and create a theatre-based environment which inherently brings in these emotional and social skills, and combine that with curriculum subjects like science and socials, history and English, which will eventually make it more holistic, where they're emotionally more capable, socially more aware, and also are learning the lessons that are there in their textbooks. So that is the kind of work we are trying to do. And like Aruna just said, we are also into experiential learning because we create theatre-based experiences for them, where we have seen that the learning and the impact is far higher than just a classroom teaching. So the memory, retention and all is much, much higher. But yes, thanks to COVID, we had to stop all our work in schools and at our own studio, where we have a group of children where we conduct these kind of sessions. So all of that had to be shifted onto an online setup. Now, how do we bring about these skills, that theatre, which is inherently live, onto an online platform? So we picked the salient elements of what we would do otherwise. And so we now have stories. We use a lot of storytelling with dramatics. So there is a little bit of performance in this from the storyteller in terms of voice and action. And we've brought in a lot of activities and games that we also otherwise play live. So these games and activities bring about a lot of positive thought in the children. So there is this attitude of enjoyment. So they all come with this thought that we will have fun. Now that is half the battle won. And now we know we can deliver a lot more, and they're willing to absorb a lot more because they come with that positive enjoyment purpose. So that is how we've been trying to build these lessons online. So we've got a pretty good response. The parents are very happy with the kind of sessions that we've been doing. So yeah, so that's about what we're currently doing in the COVID situation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rajshri. Rucha, over to you.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, NSRC team, for organizing this. It's lovely to see the diversity of interventions that we have. I was just listening to Aruna and Rajashri. It's nice to listen to different initiatives. To talk a little bit about Mantra for Change before I get to that, the pandemic, if it's taught us one thing, it's that everybody needs to learn to manage change. Whether you're an individual, whether you're a small organization, whether you're a large organization, you need to learn how to manage change and to keep up with the changing times. And I think that kind of sums up what Mantra for Change tries to do. Is we work alongside with the public education system to build their capacity, to enable them to manage education and to lead improvement in their own system, right? We recognize that every child deserves an enriching learning experience, and towards that, we enable the education ecosystem to be able to deliver that at scale. So we focus on developing leadership, enabling them to come up with structures and processes that allow co-creation, that allow participation, and that allow multiple actors in the system, whether it's teachers, head teachers, or middle management, to work together in order to provide children the best education that's possible. In terms of what we've been experiencing with the pandemic, I think it has caused two things. One is that it's exposed a lot of things that were already happening in the system, whether it was inequity, whether it was certain mindsets that people had or practice it has. It's exposed a lot of things. And second, it's energized the system to do something, to change something, to respond to the scenario. And so along those lines, what we've been trying to do is work with the system. We work with under-resourced schools primarily. So one big headwind that we faced was that in the initial days, schools were very unsure of what's happening. First, not just schools, even we thought, oh, it's going to be for a while. It'll be 1 month, it's going to be 2 months, and then we'll come back to the normal. And so back then it was very difficult to think about different things. But as slowly realization set in that this is here to stay, there's no going back to an earlier normal, there's only a new normal going forward. People have begun to accept different ideas and accept different experiments. We work alongside with 3 state governments, Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, and Delhi. And so with Punjab, we recently did an intervention to hold a virtual parent-teacher meeting statewide. And that's an example of the willingness of the state or willingness of organizations to try something new. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think it's also caused us to stop and think, but that pause has helped us to reimagine different things. One major headwind that's also we've been facing is reach and under-resourced schools, and also especially private schools have been facing a lot of difficulties in terms of catering to their population, whether they're able to collect fees or reach out to children, both in terms of technology as well as availability of teachers in the schools. That's one big headwind that many of our private schools are especially facing.
Okay, thank you, Rucha. That's interesting. I think you've had to deal with a lot of challenges there. Let's move over to Timothy.
Thank you, Srivardhini ma'am, for having me. And so I'll briefly describe what Coursebook is. So Coursebook is a platform for educators like authors, speakers, coaches, or coaching and training institutions, where our platform helps them to create, market, and sell their courses online using our platform. So anybody who would like to take live classes using their own custom branded domain, or anybody who would like to teach online using videos, and any form of courses, they can use our platform and they can deliver the courses online. So we had a very interesting start in the edtech space. So we started back in 2018. So when we were an aggregator back then in 2018, just when we joined NSRCEL, our whole business model was completely different. What we started doing back then was that we aggregated all the training and coaching institutions in Bangalore, and we made a kind of a platform which was something very similar to Make My Trip. So if at all you would like to book hotels, or if you want to book flights, what you could do is, you could go and filter down the kind of place you want to go to, and what you would like to study. You could do something like that. And you could even book courses using Coursebook. So that is why the name Coursebook had come out. And so initial months of Coursebook was really interesting, because we figured out a lot. We understood a lot about what the education side of the students is, the pain points of the students, the pain points of the educators, and all of that. And it was a good learning for us. And after 6 months of functioning, we realized that this model is not scalable, because it was mostly brick and mortar businesses that we were supporting, and not majorly tech businesses. We were not enabling them technologically. We were only enabling them with admissions, or we were only enabling them with more students. So then what we did was we took a pause. We came back to our drawing tables. Then we went and we drew out a sketch as to how we could help all these educators. We went to all the educators, all our current customers, like all the coaching institutions around Bangalore, and we asked them how we could be able to help them better. So most of the people were like, what, we are looking for a platform where we could sell our courses online as well. We want to make sure, and that we were already dominant in the online space as well. So educators were already thinking in that space. So what we did was we came back and we made this platform where, educators could take live classes. They need not use Zoom. So they could use Coursebook as well to take up live classes. They need not use any platforms for marketing. They could do email and SMS marketing using a platform. They could run ads. They could run Facebook ads and Google ads, and they could generate more students to their own educational institutions. And also what they could do is they could also deliver the courses online. It was more of like an all-in-one solution which we were giving to the educators, and it really took off well, and I am very glad that, even 1 year before COVID, or maybe in 2019 of Jan itself, that we were able to push off a platform like this. And it was more like a good to have a solution for most of the educators. But the most interesting part is right when COVID hit, it was more of a blessing in disguise. I know I should not be saying this, but it's a blessing in disguise for my company. That is because the sales shot up, the more number of customers who said no came back to us, they started calling us and all of that. So it's a different, we are in a different situation. My company is like in a totally different space altogether. So the longer COVID lasts for me, the more better sales would happen as well. So I think of it in that way. And so yeah, in brief, this is what is happening with Coursebook.
Okay, so you fall into the mold of the edtech startups that have sort of seen this upswing, right? Huge tailwind. So good for you, but please don't wish that this thing will last.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that's great, and I think you all sort of. If I could again quickly ask you, Timothy, to just describe. Now you were already sort of positioned well when COVID hit.
Yeah.
So what adjustments did you have to make to take advantage of this tailwind? What organizationally, what did you do differently?
So the main adjustment which I had to do was to play in the way my team was positioned, because we were all used to coming to the office and functioning. And one of the main thing is we used to do sales in person. That means we used to go down to the institute or go to the educator, have a demo with them, then go meet them in person. And right now what we had to do is we had to change the way we did sales, or we had to change the way our team collaborated, right? So we started using a lot of remote tools, more like Slack, or we started using like interesting tools like Notion and Slack and all of that, which would help us in better collaboration. And we had to take the whole team offline. So initial 1 month was a little bit hectic because more number of leads started coming in, but our team was not getting adjusted to giving demos online. So there were complaints from my team saying, we have to give the same demo multiple times a day and it's really hectic. So we tried different processes saying we used to club around 10 to 12 educators into a single demo. And then we tried different models like that. And so our main problem was with how we would gather or how we would cater to the incoming requests, and also how to set up the team to function very smoothly. And what helped us is with the use of remote tools, especially Slack has helped us a lot in functioning very well because, we could communicate instantly, we could keep on point, and we used the different other tools which would be integrated into Slack to help our functioning faster, like tickets or calls and all of that. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting, right? You had to do a lot of tweaking of your organizational structures, the processes, the routines that you have to actually take advantage of this opportunity. So, Rucha, maybe we can go with you. If you could talk a little bit about how are you looking at positioning yourself, your organization for a post-COVID world? What's the thought process within the organization right now? How do you see this going? And what is it that you are concretely doing within the organization so that when we emerge out of this in whatever shape and form, you're able to sort of hit the ground running? So what is the thought process and what are some of the concrete things that are happening?
Great. I think I'll just build on what you just said is when we emerge out of this. And I think that's the crux of what we're trying to do in terms of positioning ourselves now also, is how do we come back from this? How do we build back better? How do we build the system back better? And that's how we're positioning ourselves to say, how do we now build a resilient education system? It was broken earlier also. There were definitely many areas of improvement, but what COVID has done is exposed some of the things that were happening. And so how we're positioning ourselves is how do we use this period of flux that we have and this period of uncertainty? Because as a school leader, if I'm not doing school rounds and observing classes 6 hours a day, what do I do now? And that is a very beautiful opportunity to reimagine what the role of a school leader, or reimagine what the role of a teacher, and even reimagine what I think all of us are doing is reimagine what the role of a parent would be like in the post-COVID scenario. So that is what we're trying to do at Mantra, is enable the system. So we're working alongside with state functionaries, working alongside with school leaders, alongside with teachers, in order to help them build back better.
Okay, so just a related question, and Aruna, please feel free to jump in here, is also, are you even thinking of a post-COVID scenario and planning for it? Or is it more, you're responding depending on what it is that your customers want, depending on whatever is happening, you're sort of constantly doing a course correction and you're sort of saying, okay, we really don't know what's going to come, so let's just be in a response mode.
No, not at all in the response mode, I think. See, initially it was a response mode because it was completely unexpected that we would face such a situation. But as I already mentioned, we were into building online content and online, we wanted to go the tech way slowly, but now this is given us a big push to get there much faster. So we were looking at building AI capability for the product that we were looking at. Since we are our core belief is that anything a child would learn, it should be a lot to do with both hands-on and tech, there should be a blend of both. So we still want to hold on to a couple of creations and design work that we have done in that direction. We would probably look at a hybrid solution at the end of the day. All said and done, currently, if you look at the situation calls for it, everybody is online for everything, right? There is a point at which there will be saturation. Invariably, how long would a child sit in front of a device? Especially the age group that which we look at, 3 years to 14 years, it's too much to expect a child to sit in one place and learn for so many hours, whether it is school content or anything else. So we do feel that eventually parents and children post-pandemic will look at coming into centers, learning in person also. So we look at a hybrid solution as such, but yeah, tech way also we are going to get much, much stronger and much sooner than we would have done otherwise. Yeah.
So what you're saying is you will still hang on to the core.
Yes, yes.
Which value proposition of your organization, which
Yes.
was experiential learning,
Yes.
to deliver concepts and so on. So that will remain, but
Yeah.
then you're also building a digital engine that will complement. In the
Yes,
long.
yes, very much. A
Right.
hybrid solution, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Rachi, do you want to chime in on that?
Okay. Yeah. So I think what we are thinking as a theater company is this is a temporary phase. So we are trying to build a methodology of teaching online to suit the current situation. It is only, yes, it was initially reactionary. Now we have some kind of a structure. But going back post-COVID, I think I completely agree with Aruna that it cannot be entirely online. Though now it is entirely online, it has to be kind of a blended situation, because we inherently also believe that that personal touch or the energy that happens during a physical presence cannot be replicated online. And a lot of screen time is definitely not advisable. And also the social skills are completely zero currently. They don't interact with people. They don't talk to their friends. And in fact, even the fights, we in fact say fighting or having an argument itself is a very good learning, which is not happening entirely at all. So all of those skills are now currently kept in the back burner, which need to come back, which have to be built eventually. So I'm sure, in fact, children, I am a mother myself, and my daughter who's complaining about going to school is now waiting to get back to school. She's waiting to see when she can meet her friends, when she can go to the playground and jump around and play. And, so these are things that are very, very necessary, and not just the lessons. Yes, science and math and English is going on. Those classes are going on, but their holistic development is something that has to be thought of, and getting online or getting on a platform is something we cannot substitute for. That is what we feel.
Okay, so you are really looking at this as a stopgap measure, and by and large returning to the pre-COVID times once this blows over. So that's sort of your broad view of how to move forward.
Yeah, sorry, but however, we've also seen some advantages that the online platform gives. Mm-hmm. Being the parental involvement is a little high here. We do see parents being more involved and more participative in their child's learning, which otherwise, they kind of disconnect from. Once they send them off to school, they're disconnected. But now there is far more participation from the parents and involvement, which is a good thing. So we'd like to try and retain some of the positive things that the online advantage has given us, and predominantly go back to what the experiential form of learning.
Okay. So very interesting, very different organizations and very different response in the, on a tactical level, and also even moving forward on the longer term, how you're looking at it and how you're looking to blend and in what proportion, etc., the online versus your traditional way. It's all, that's very interesting to hear. So let's shift gears, and now let's talk broadly about the education/edtech ecosystem, right? The sector overall, and what is going on. And my first question is particularly to Timothy, since he's sort of the edtech person here on the panel. See, right now, edtechs are clocking high double-digit growth rates, right? I think Topper said they are growing at 100%, and everybody is upwards of 50%. And I'm sure that's probably been your experience too. And they're also raising substantial funding on the back of this kind of a growth. So is this sustainable, right? And how do you see edtech growing? Is it going to taper off? What is your view? Because I mean, there are also people here on the panel who think and also hope that things will get back to normal. And, where do you stand on this? How are you looking at it?
So, ma'am, I would like to start by saying that, I was an ex-employee of Byju's. So I worked in Byju's before starting off with Coursebook. So I can maybe answer a few things about the future of EdTech and how I perceive it to be. And what I think is that, because of COVID, yes, maybe their sales would have increased or their sales would have doubled down or increased by 100 times also. It might have happened. But what I presume is once the whole of the COVID pandemic is out of the equation and we are back, I would still think that the tech companies or the education will increase, but you can never replace a classroom learning by the edtech companies. So edtech is edtech and classroom learning is classroom. Edtech can only complement a classroom learning. So I am a strong believer of that. I would never say that classroom learning can replace edtech companies by any way. Since I myself have sold a lot of Byju's products every month, so I can say that, and I've spoken to a lot of parents as well. So that is one thing. So yeah, as of now, speaking of Topper or Unacademy or speaking of Byju's and Upgrade and all of these companies, I would say that this is good for these edtech companies because the learners, on the other hand, are able to get to understand that online learning is also not that bad. Since at one point of time, selling tech products or educational tech products was really hard to Indian parents. Indian parents would always be like, we prefer the classroom way of learning, and we don't want to have, like many of the panelists also have said, we don't want screen time to our children and all of that. That is very much evident, but I think there is a shift in the mindset which is happening, the shift in the way of the way people are thinking. They're also like, online learning is not as bad as we have thought of it to be, and the payments being taken online for the educational institutions, or the way even some part of teaching is also happening. So I would say the growth will always be there, but it might dip a bit after the pandemic is gone. But the edtech companies will start to grow. But I would like to conclude by saying that edtech companies can never replace schools or can never replace colleges. Schools and colleges will always be as they are, but they can always complement the education which the schools and colleges are doing as of now. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So just building on that, so what you're saying is there has been a nudge. The pandemic has given a nudge and brought about a behavioral change in mindset, which has led to better adoption of edtech, which was sort of maybe struggling a little bit prior to this. Turning to my other panelists now, building on this, how do you see partnerships between online, like edtech and traditional players? Are you starting to see some of those things happen in the ecosystem? Because clearly there is complementarity, as Timothy has been talking about. So now it has come to the surface more than ever before. What are the advantages of online education and what are the advantages of the traditional education? So I guess each party understands that the other is indispensable. So how do you see partnerships moving forward from this point onwards between them? Maybe Rajri, you can go first, and then Aruna and Rucha.
Sure. Yes, like I spoke before, there are certain advantages that we are seeing on the online platform, where one is the parental involvement and the fact that there is that convenience of sitting at home. But I think there are also a lot of disadvantages that is being discovered, which otherwise, when the school was there, EdTech was just an additional, like Timothy just said, it was a complementary thing. Now, when this has become the focus, this has become the only way of education, there is now a lot more discovery of how it can also be disadvantages. So, for example, if the child is disinterested, all that the child has to do is switch off the camera and walk off, which cannot happen in a classroom. So there is invariably that environment that is created. Plus, another thing is psychologically, when the child is going to a school or going to another place, there is that mental acceptance that I'm going there to learn. Here, it's just your own bedroom, or it's just a study that you're sitting at. So the child is psychologically feeling like I'm at home. I can walk off into the kitchen, get a snack when I want, which is kind of a very casual way of approaching the whole process of learning. So that I think emotionally and psychologically does not build into an entire holistic approach to teaching, to learning something, right? So this is very true for school children. For adults, yes, it is completely different. When they're voluntarily sitting in front of the system to learn, then it's a completely different scenario. But for children, when they're asked to sit in front of a device for a long time, with their cameras off, with their mics off, you have no idea what is happening on the other end. So that way, the focus and the learning, I think, has significantly reduced. Yes, the syllabus is being completed, the lessons are being taught, but is the learning happening on the same level is something that we have to really see. So in terms of partnerships, yes, we did look at, we didn't have a video conferencing platform ourselves because we worked live with children in schools and in our studio. So yes, we did partner with another company called Kinomial, which is also a startup at NSRCEL, which helped us build programs online, and they helped us, customize things to suit what our needs were. So yes, we are also trying to connect with a lot of other tech people to help us make this far more impactful, far more effective. But I think, like I said, this is just a temporary phase. So we will build something that will suit, but the bigger chunk of learning has to happen on a personal level.
Aruna?
Oh, yeah. Like Rajeshri said, no, the advantages and disadvantages, they're very clear. In fact, currently when I am doing sessions one-on-one for kids, especially the reading program, I see that the parent involvement is very, very high. Interestingly, when I listen to their feedback about the school online sessions, right, as Rajeshri said, rightly put, kids turn, because they're not allowed to interact with any of their friends, right? Of course, it becomes a nuisance if everybody's audio is on and video is on, probably nobody will listen also, but otherwise also there is a lot of distraction for children. They're not able to really focus and learn. So yeah, in terms of collaboration for us, I think we are at this point of time, we are building our own platform and things like that, our own learning platform. Collaboration is not something that we are looking at. We want to be self-sustained and we would like to build things on our own. We are on the way for that. Yeah, that's where we are.
All right.
Thank you.
Rucha?
Yeah, sure. I think along the lines of what Timothy mentioned earlier, I think Mantra, as a player who works closely with the education system, we're definitely already engaging in partnerships. So we work alongside with open source societal platforms like Shiksha Lokam and Diksha in order to leverage technology to reach out to as many stakeholders as possible. Edtech has, when we work with schools, we sometimes feel there's a mistrust amongst school stakeholders when we talk about Edtech. But at the same time, NGOs on the ground like us have built a lot of trust with stakeholders by working closely with them over a period of years. And so if as an NGO who works closely on the ground, I understand what are the needs of my stakeholders. What is it that would help a teacher teach better in her classroom? What is it that would help a leader lead his or her school better? And I'm able to communicate that with an Edtech company or an Edtech startup and kind of have a conversation around what is it that would help our stakeholders work better, whether it's an online conferencing tool, whether it's an online data collection tool, or whether it's just a tool to track each other's tasks. I don't know, depending on different ideas and requirements that stakeholders have. I think beautiful partnerships can emerge out of this, which is something that we're already been trying at Mantra.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think developing a deeper understanding of each other's capabilities is helping build better partnerships and better products eventually for everybody concerned. Okay, so then let's move on to maybe one last question I want to ask about regulation, right? And how is regulating helping or hurting broadly the education and edtech sector? And I'll let whoever wants to share anything about it, please go ahead. Any of the panelists?
Okay.
Yeah, Aruna, you have some.
Yeah, I was just thinking, see, very recently the NEP was released, right? The National Education Policy. I was going through that. It looks like a very fabulous policy on the outset, very well detailed and fantastic dreams. But when it comes to the regulation of all of this, when it comes to the implementation of regulation, I think I find it really hard to believe that it is easy to really achieve. It's very difficult. And, you know, the more the regulatory bodies, the harder it will become for managing this whole policy to be executed is what I was thinking.
Okay.
It looks really very hard. Dreams are very big, fantastic ones, but at the ground level, expecting teachers to be at certain, you know, qualification at this point of time itself, I think they're finding it very hard to recruit good teachers, right? Years to come with technology being enabled and teachers to be so well prepared on all fronts, not just their subjects, to be able to deliver it online. All the expectations are going to be much, much higher in the coming days. So coming days are going to be very difficult is what I think. Implementation and regulation is not that easy. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I kind of, yeah, practically in a country like India, especially when there's so many complexities, yes, that could be one negative point. But I'm also quite hopeful of the policy that has been released, because I think it has kind of broadened our outlook, and it is intending to look beyond exams, look beyond marks, and trying to blend various different subjects and trying to blend the various other skills, vocational and the other skills along with the curriculum subject. So these are very positive ways of looking at education as a whole and training the children. So this, for us as a theatre company, I think gives us a lot of scope to include the vocational education, the skill building, the emotional wellness, the social wellness. All of this can be very far easily built into the regular school system, which otherwise was a hindrance for us. Schools prefer to just complete their syllabus, make sure the tests and exams are on time, the exams are, give them the marks and push them out of school. So that was what the schools were looking at when we interacted with them, which was a huge entry barrier for us. But now the policy itself is allowing for these kind of skills to come in, which I think is a very positive step, though implementation might take some time. But I think the parents are also, a lot of parents are already on this line. So parents also want a lot of such emotional and social skills to be built into their children more than them scoring marks. So that change has already happened in the parents' mind. So it's not going to be very difficult to adapt to this new policy is what I feel. But I'm generally a little more hopeful to see a lot more skills like I think emotional wellness and social wellness is what is going to build into the curriculum, which is going to make children far more adept at handling, especially situations like this. The ability to change and adapt to new situations, which otherwise is kind of they're stuck in a box. So it will help them accept new situations with far more openness and ease. So yeah, I'm a little hopeful about the new regulations.
Okay, great.
So I would like to add a small point to that. Coming from an educator's perspective, one of the main things which I was hoping for many years is that the government reduces the GST of 18% to maybe 5 or 7%. That's because we are paying a lot of money for every student who is enrolled. So I don't know if it comes under a regulation or so, but I think I mean, we have written a lot of times, even all the Edtech companies have written and all the schools have written to the government, but I don't think the government would ever reduce the 18% GST, which is a lot of amount of taxes that we pay to the government. So that is something which I hope, needs to be changed for even the online education or the offline space. Education for that to grow. I mean, I know I'm talking like a person who loves a lot of money, but this is what my perspective is, and coming to the latest regulation which the government has recently released, I think it's very nice to see that after many decades that the government has finally brought in some changes. But I think, as Aruna ma'am has said, that it is very difficult to implement, but I think if implemented, it's one of the best thing that India will have.
Okay. All right. If there are no other thoughts on this, then no, it's fascinating, and we can go on about regulation for a little longer, right? For example, there is SWAYAM, which is again a government initiative, which is sort of open sourced courses and so on to enable access to education. So it would be interesting to see how that complements or competes with whatever private actors are doing. Anyhow, I think what we'll do is we have just about 15 minutes. So maybe now's a good time to open it up for audience Q&A. So maybe you can do a virtual raise of hand and we can ask you to pose your question, or you can type it into the chat window. Okay. I think Geeta has.
Yeah, there's a question from Geeta Sharma.
I
She
think
says it would be
comment than a question. Seems to be, she says.
Yeah, it's a comment.
How PLD for teachers, etc., may be implemented following the NEP. And I'm concerned for government school teachers. Okay. Any thoughts on that?
Maybe I can give a quick response to that. I won't comment so much on the NEP that's been released. I would like to read it deeply before I comment too much on it. But in terms of what you just mentioned, I'm guessing you mean professional learning and development by PLD, Geeta? I will move with that assumption. Okay, great. Sure. I share your concern about how this would look like for government school teachers. And in fact, even the state governments that we've been working with, there's what I think one of our biggest discoveries has been that intent is always there. Those sitting at the state, even at the center, they always have this intent of how do we provide the best kind of learning environment, even for teachers. Recently, we held a series of workshops alongside with the Andhra Pradesh Social Welfare Department, where the departments were very much willing to think about and ask teachers, what is it that would help you plan your lessons better? What is it that would help you teach better? And then integrate some of those into some topics which are, of course, there as per order, as per mandate, that need to be carried out. And they were also willing to blend models in terms of what can teachers practice on online Zoom calls, what can teachers learn on their own with self-learning material that we co-created with the department. So I think definitely there is a willingness in the departments, in the state departments, to try and think about how do we provide a learning environment for teachers as well. But I think, and earlier responding to some of the things that the panelists mentioned earlier as well, something we need to do about such policies and regulations is give them a little bit of time for everybody to make sense of and to try and respond over a period of time. But I'm very hopeful, Geeta, that the multiple state governments are trying a lot of ways of reaching out to their teachers and providing the best support that they can.
Okay.
There's another question. Do you think Edtech companies will gain momentum for poor children in terms of subscriptions and infrastructure in remote areas?
Maybe, Timothy, do you want to give that a shot?
Yes, ma'am. I think it will, because subscription is the next key aspect of the edtech sector, I feel. And I think most of the edtech companies like An Academy, Byju's are all working on subscriptions. So since the in subscription, what happens is you pay a very less fee, let's say 199 rupees or 500 rupees a month. So this is, I think it's pretty much affordable to pay rather than 20,000 or 30,000 at a stretch, or in two payments as well. So when it comes to rural areas, as per your question, if it is subscription payments, and I think that would be one of the best way for education companies to impart their courses or to deliver their courses by taking subscription payments, and which would also help the student to dynamically access more content for very less fee. And I think Indian digital payments system, like Razorpay's latest way of collecting payments, which is UPI payments, subscription UPI payments, where you can pay automatically using your UPI every month, and debit cards or credit cards. So this is becoming even more easier for edtech companies to implement their policies, or their payment structures towards the rural areas. And I think this works very well.
I'd just like to add to that. We're working in the state of Bihar in two to three districts. And what we've noticed is that the reach is really patchy for rural areas, especially like Bihar. And over there, one of our immediate responses, I think, Professor, you asked earlier, what is your response and what is your reaction? And one of our immediate reaction to try and address some of the discontinuity in education is to hold some of these spaces together for children to come together, because internet connectivity is extremely poor in these areas. And what you said, a subscription of 100, 200 rupee per month is also extremely high. We have had so many instances of data packs running out. And so what we've been doing is we've been leveraging women in the community who already care deeply about the community, who are mothers themselves, and who are often semi-literate, maybe literate up to 8th grade, up to 10th grade, and who are willing to do a lot for the community. And so enabling subscriptions or enabling connectivity to these community leaders is one step easier, and then enabling these community leaders to reach out to the rest of the disconnected population is something that we've been doing. But reaching out to the children directly in areas like Bihar and similar areas all over India seems like a few steps forward right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Richard. I'll give you one small example. I think there's a sound which is coming. Jacob, can you just have a look? What I was saying is, okay.
People. Okay.
I think it is.
Do we go ahead with the next question? Yeah, so people with disabilities, how do we see the EdTech offline education space to come up with solutions for them? COVID may have hampered them the most. What is your take on it?
Really sad. Okay.
So anybody wants to comment on how, if and how COVID has sort of maybe differentially impacted people with disabilities, and any solutions for them? That's the question. Maybe what we do is we go to the next question and come back to this so that our panelists have had a chance to think about it. Professor Srinivasan has a question. Do you want to read out?
Yeah. So is our Indian education system capable of managing unbundling of education? Can we have teachers or learners access individual lessons rather than courses? How does teacher education change? What happens to curriculum design? There are a couple of questions.
Anybody can go, please.
I would give you an example from my own life. I think I graduated from SRM University in 2018. And so since it was a deemed university, we had, for every subject, we had a different teacher, and we could choose our teachers, and we could also go to different teachers based on the topic as well. So we had that flexibility, and it was very much like how Professor Srinivasan has asked over here. So is our Indian education system capable of managing unbundling of these chapters or lessons and then teaching them? Yes, I think it is. But I think, the way it is implemented, I don't know how it would be done on a larger scale. But if it is done, it is even more effective. And since teachers have their own expertise in each of the different topics, and if teachers can teach like that, I think that would be some of the best way to teach, because that is how I was taught in my last 2 years of my engineering, and I really learned very well. Since teachers with their expertise in one particular topic used to come and teach us, and not for the whole subject. So yeah, I think this can be done.
Any thoughts on curriculum design?
I think so. Ma'am, actually, when I was reading in the NEP, there is an option for teachers to build their own curriculum and design it. There's a lot of freedom currently given to teachers also to do what is the best way to teach a certain topic to the child. So that kind of freedom, now that it has been given, I'm sure even teachers would enjoy doing that. Current system is where everything is very, very, very chalked out and completely structural and expected to be finished in certain way. But I think the new policy gives a lot of freedom for teachers to do that. And maybe that might excite teachers also to perform better and enjoy the sessions that they're going to do. I think it's definitely possible in our education system. A lot of schools might already be doing it, but at the government school level, yeah, I don't know what the situation is. Maybe Rucha would be a better person to answer that. Private schools are doing, some of them are definitely doing this.
Okay. Okay, shall we move
to the next question? Yeah. Is it time that all explicit knowledge could be pushed online? What are the new models for learning, imparting knowledge? Institutions such as Harvard are investing big into simulation-based learning. Which of the companies on the panel are looking at using technology to drive learning through simulations? If yes, are the teachers equipped for this, or do we see a big divide between the have schools versus have not schools?
Okay.
I would just like to touch upon this. So we've, in UNB Theatre, we've constantly been discussing about how we can build a theatre experience that comes through technology. Now, these are two very opposing contexts, but simulations, like Mr. Shrikant says, is one of the aspects that we were looking at. Create an immersive experience through the use of technology, the use of VR, the use of 360 cameras and things like that, where you can have an immersive experience for the viewer. So here in this case, the student, who will be able to kind of put themselves in that environment and be able to experience it firsthand. So that is something we have discussed, and we are trying to build on that. And because the technology itself is set up so well, teachers may not be very much required. Teachers they might just be needed to facilitate the whole thing. So the technology itself will be able to give enough information in terms of, say if you want, there is some information around and just at the click, you will be able to go in depth into a choice of topics. So that way the technology itself could be completely equipped to build a simulated environment for the imparting of a specific topic. So the role of teachers that way is kind of reduced, just to maybe facilitating and probably a final discussion to clear doubts. So that way, the problem that the teachers are facing now, especially now, because they have to suddenly adapt to a tech-based teaching, which they are not used to. A lot of teachers don't even know how to use a basic software. So they had to learn and build on that. So the time lost in training the teacher is avoided that way. So, but it's at a very nascent stage. We're still in discussions. We're talking to people in tech to see how we can build something like that. Yeah, so yes, there are thoughts, but I'm not sure how practical it would be.
So I could actually jump in on the question on simulations, and then we'll also go back to Nisarg's question that we have moved on from. So Shrikant, to your question about simulation and simulation-based training, I can give you my thoughts because I have actually, with a colleague of mine, designed a simulation here at IIMB, right? So we put together a simulation. So based on that, I can give you some insights, which is, simulations are very interesting, right? So they straight away raise the energy levels in the class. It's very interesting. They're somewhat gamifying the whole thing. So it's very exciting for students. Now, having said that, it cannot exclusively be used as a pedagogy. It's best used in combination with other forms of learning, right? Whether it's case-based, whether it's a lecture, whether it is something else. So yes, simulation is an interesting pedagogy, but it has to be used in a measured manner. Otherwise, it becomes, too much of a game, right? So that's one part of it. Your question is not which of the companies. And depending on what kind of simulation it is, there are also challenges, right? I mean, the technology has to be really reliable for the simulation to work each and every time. So it's still not at a point where it's completely hassle-free. So routinely, whether it's our simulation or other simulations from Harvard and Wharton and so on, we have seen that it does sometimes, tend to go off a little bit. So it's still a very nascent stage, I'll say. The number of simulation, even, and I'm talking about an MBA kind of a curriculum, are also fairly limited in number and only starting to grow. And I'm sure if I'm not very aware of myself of what happens at the school level, but I would hazard a guess and say that they are very sparingly used. The technology still has to mature, and I don't think there has been a concerted effort. I do know of one or two companies. I can connect you offline. I don't recall the name right now. They are working in this space, but it's not by any means very prevalent. And going back to the question about people with disabilities, so, it depends. I believe it depends on the type of disability, right? First and foremost, how COVID has impacted somebody with disabilities depends on whether it's auditory in nature, it's visual, or it's mobility related and so on. And we have several students here at IIMB with various types of disabilities in class. And specifically people who are hearing impaired and so on. Now, they thrive on the basis of being able to lip read in class, right? So when we are in a classroom environment, they're sitting right in the front and they lip read, and that's how they understand what's being said. So obviously, when you move into an online format, there are definitely challenges, right? And we have to work with them. We have to pay attention. And also, of course, the technology itself has to get better and better. Maybe you have, a close-up camera, etc., so that they are able to understand what is being said. So adjustments have to be made. Whereas I think with certain types of disabilities, I don't know if the impact is any better or worse. So we'll have to look at each type of disability and then see what needs to be done. So I think if anybody has any thoughts on this, please feel free to add. Okay, so I think we are all out on time now, so we can conclude the panel here. Thank you all for a very energetic discussion. Over to the NSRCEL team for closing comments.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for your time and moderating the session. Thanks, Timothy. Thanks, Rajshri, and thanks, Aruna, and thanks, Rucha. I've shared a feedback form in the chat. I would request everyone to share your feedback, valuable feedback on the session. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and it was an amazing session. Thank you
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.